welcome everyone to another episode of Vinny Presents. I am delighted this morning to bring to you my buddy, the man from New Theory Podcast, Tom LaVecchia. Tom, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Vinny, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It certainly is. Thank you. And so, Tom, for the few people out there that may not know you, you are a podcaster. You have an amazing show, which I highly recommend everyone who's watching this go subscribe to it right now. It's called the New Theory Podcast. It's amazing. And it's I've used a lot of what you've done and what you've said to kind of create my own show. You even gave me a lot of good tips when I met you last year over at Mike Marino's basement.
Yep.
And so the rest is history. But let's tell the guests a little bit about yourself. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so my name is Tom LaVecchia. I grew up in New Jersey, still here. I live and die here. A proud New Jerseyan. My family emigrated from Italy in the late 50s, moved to Elizabeth, and I grew up in Roseville Park and Elizabeth, and then now live in Scotch Plains. So proudly, the Scotch Plains was rated one of the towns most people are moving to. So I'm happy that I stayed local. So I'm an entrepreneur. I've got two businesses that I run. One's more passive, one's super full time. That keeps me busy. I got four kids, and I just been doing the podcast for a minute. I started in 16, and I actually started the podcast because my newtheory.com, the magazine, was floundering. It was a tough time. I was trying to follow the wave. Elite Daily got bought out by like $50 million, something crazy. It was like kind of a millennial push towards readership. I was honing in on that. We had an article that went viral. So the first month, I thought I had the Midas touch. 330,000 views the first month. Next month, 1 million. I brought an editor in. It turned out to be a disaster. She crashed the magazine. So I had to kind of like recalibrate. And people said to me, they said, Tom, you're in sales. You wrote a sales book. I would love if I could be in on those conversations that you had or have. So I started a podcast in 16 and never looked back.
What I mean, let's go back a second for the
Yeah.
print. You mentioned that you had the magazine. Now, I was involved in a local newspaper that I started in Philly.
Nice.
I'm one of those diehards. I believe print is not dead. I believe there's always
Yeah.
a place for it. Just a little bit different now. Things are different.
Correct.
But it's a lot of fun,
Yeah.
and it's there's something to it that's really creative and beautiful
Yeah.
about. Of course, when you marry the two between the online component and the print
Correct.
component, that's always a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Now, what have you seen change over the years in regards to the New Theory podcast, and how have you grown? Because you have a great viewership. I always compliment you on that.
Thank you. So started out doing like business people, and I got really lucky. Like earlier on, I was able to like Gary V, who's from New Jersey, Edison Wine Library is not far from the office in Springfield. Jordan Belfort was pretty cool. I met him at a cigar bar. We kind of it's a long story, but we had to do it next door. But Jordan Belfort, just some pretty interesting people earlier on. Answered Francis in back in 16, 17. So I had some pretty like interesting guests. So I noticed a trend, right? So like let's just say you can call me anytime, but if somebody were to call me and like kind of have a business opportunity or want consulting or something, not that I'm any big deal, but like I literally have about like 20 appointments a week. I got four children. One are sales calls outbound, some are vendors trying to sell us, maybe current vendors. So I'm a pretty busy guy, admittedly, right? But if you call me up, you're like, oh, I want to be on your podcast, let's do it. So I noticed a trend that like I would literally interview really prominent people, really important people that would like never give me the time of day, but they'll come on my podcast. One of my favorite interviews, which back in the day, was Jeff Hoffman, one of the billionaire and one of the early founders of Priceline.com. Now it's Booking.com, and just one of the life lessons, business lessons that he told me. I'll get to in a second, but like just chatting with really interesting people. Wasn't making a lot of money at the time. Still not making a ton of money directly on the podcast. I'll give my secret how I monetize in a minute, but just love doing it. Love having meaningful conversations with really important people, and it's selfish for me. It's like cathartic. Like literally, what I get from it myself is worth it. But then I want to share that with our community.
Yeah, I sure in the enjoyment of it. It's interesting when you do a show like this, you have access to a lot of interesting people and you learn a lot too. I'm
Yep.
sure you would agree. And you meet some really cool people, and whether it's someone who's just in a movie or a director, or in your case, you met some really really big wigs, as
Yeah.
they say.
Well, and some smaller movies. So right, recently you had some people on Saint Michael of the City.
Yeah.
Is a Trenton base, kind of close to South Jersey, South Philly feel to it. So that's released. They're a client of ours, but they're also friends. We've been doing a lot with Kevin Interdonato. I know you're chatting with him. He came out with Bastard Sons, which we worked on as well, which is, in my opinion, one of the best modern day gangster movies that exists. It's not typical. It's not your usual kind of Italian mafia type movie. So for those, check it out. Check out Bastard Sons. So I've been kind of like been very fortunate where I've been like kind of having fun doing what I'm doing, but making money while I'm doing it, you know? So
Yeah, that's always a great thing. And thank you again. Yes, you gave the intro for Adam Ratcliffe and Kevin, who I'm beginning to connect with.
he's a hard
Yeah.
guy to nail down, but you'll nail him that. And I can't wait for that convo. So that's going to be fun. He's a South Jersey guy, not too far from Philly, and he's a Iraqi war veteran, just
Oh,
a stand up guy.
love it, love it. And then of course Jeff Stewart, who we're going to be
Yes,
interviewing. Yeah. So thank you for that, Tom.
Trenton
And that's
based,
the thing too.
yeah,
I'm sorry, repeat that.
Trenton based guy. I love it.
Great. And that's the beauty of, I'm starting to realize now, when you have sort of, when you connect with other podcasters and then you kind of share each
Yep.
other's
Yep.
guests, and you start to build this community, which is really fun.
Yeah, and I think we're just starting. I know Michael, Mike Marino is not doing a lot with podcasts. I know he does it when he can because he's so busy traveling. But that was cool to connect with you. Cool, obviously connect with Mike. He's a friend. He does. It's so weird. He literally lives down the street from me. I could walk to his house, but we're in the kind of same orbit for years. But I could walk to his home, so that was kind of cool. And that's what you do. You help each other out. You have guests. I have guests. You were on my show. I went to literally full in studio for New Theory. I know you couldn't come up right away,
Yeah.
so I did a stream for you, which I was happy to do. And that's what we need more of, Vinny, and you know that, not less of. You know.
Yeah, I agree, and that was very nice of you. I do appreciate you doing that, and I agree. I think there's a need to big brother help out little brother, and then kind of pay it forward. And
Yep.
not many people are willing to do that. So it just, just said, it just speaks about your character. So I appreciate that.
Well, the other thing is I don't like to say no. I do get, and I'm not. Trust me, I am a small potato in the game, but I do get a fair amount of media requests for interviews related to the podcast, and I don't like to say no. It's just really a time constraint, so I just don't have a lot of time. I really wish I almost like I got a consultant. And he was like, "You need to set up so much time for media." I was on Fox again last week, so obviously bigger press. I'm not going to turn down. So, what I'm going to try to do a better job at doing more of these to get kind of my message out to attract people to the show, and it makes it easier for to build your community with great people like yourself. You know,
Hey, thank you. Likewise. Yeah, success. I always say success builds on success.
correct.
Uh, so take us from the journey from that first subscriber
Yeah.
to now. What do you
Oh,
end up?
I was a disaster. We did it with Skype, audio only. I want to say we kind of my wife kind of helped me out a little bit when she was dating me in the background. Some other people along the way, but so just Skype. We used the old what was that that conference line? Hit one to go into conference room, hit nine to record, or two to whatever it
Yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah.
right? So I used that. So it was like a disaster in the beginning, but I had really, really, really great guests on and really good conversations. We were audio only, right around the P9, pin. I don't want to say because I don't want to demonetize, especially since you're trying to get to where you need to get. I went in 20. I went um, video, so I started doing more of that, and that kind of took off. And then I did have a podcast with a guy named John Panisi. He was a former member of organized crime. What happened was, and I explained this on another podcast with Andrew Givino, that I literally just interviewed business people and kind of had a business only podcast. But then obviously I had a personal interest in like kind of organized crime. So by doing that, those numbers did much better. They did like 4x of regular podcasts. So I said, all right, this whole like mob genre thing is pretty big. Let me go ahead and go down that road. So I did kind of interview some pretty notable people. Sammy the Bull, I don't know it's mixed. I get it. But my first cousin married his niece. I know Karen, she's a personal friend. She came to my book launch party. So for me, I asked them like business questions. I didn't delve into the morality. I'm not the arbiter of that. I interviewed Pablo Escobar's wife and asked her some interesting questions, and she's not an informant in any way. I interviewed the son of Totorina, who was the guy who blew up the judges in Sicily in the 90s, not an informant, did no press in America whatsoever. So I kind of did that. And I'm known for respectfully, and it's kind of a mixed bag, but I'm known for doing a lot of crime podcasts. Meanwhile, he interviewed Mark Laurie. He's the guy who started Wonder, diapers.com, multi-billionaire. Don't get me wrong, did well, 25,000 views, but people like the crime stuff. So what I'm trying to find, Vinny, is a balance of doing kind of what I love and in my wheelhouse, which is a business, by but being smarter about doing the organized crime stuff than I have in the past. Because I think I got a little loose on that as well, and I think to my detriment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it goes back to which I'm sure you'll agree as an entrepreneur is it's you got to give the people what they want, and
Yeah,
you got to fill what they. Sometimes you have to sacrifice what you want in
correct.
order to get what the market wants.
True. And the other
And
part is, and I kind of wrestle with this, is I'm an Italian American first, American first, obviously, proud American first, but I'm Italian American proudly. And our community is divided. It's kind of like we don't support each other enough. There's, you like I probably missed out on some business opportunities. So I'll give you kind of like where I got kind of double banged, if you will. I missed out on business opportunities because I was interviewing people in there was ex Cosa Nostra, right? And the regular good Italian American people that I know are like, hey, I'd love to have you on my podcast, or I'd love to come on your podcast, but I'm not following that guy. I want to kind of distance myself. And then a lot of times that I have on my guests podcast, I'm sorry, people that I have on my podcast that are guests wind up doing business with me, right? So if I miss out on a guest opportunity, I also miss out on a business opportunity. Then there was kind of like a whole movement of like they didn't like that I did informants, like hey, you had informants, and I get it, I get it. I grew up around a whole bunch of people that were adjacent to that life, and I get that people that went against their oath, that kind of stuff. But I've been consistent. I just like to hear the business aspect, right? And I like to get it who I can get it from, and I'm a little unapologetic about it. Some people like it, some people don't. Don't like to be divisive, but if I have, let's say, person A on, right, and they say a story and it turns out to be BPS, I'm happy to have person B on who can go against that. So I keep an open forum as well. So that's kind of like where I am right now. I'm just kind of looking to grow my brand online as a talent, if you will. And I just like to keep doing interesting interviews with interesting people.
yeah, I grapple with that too, Tom. I mean, as far as the mob genre, it's for me
Yeah,
it's a little close to home. So, and I do
yeah,
have people on from time to time that'll speak on it. Nick
yeah,
Christopher's,
yeah. He reached
uh,
out. I'm gonna have him on the show as well.
yeah, Parisi. I mean, yeah, I'll put. We'll
Yeah,
discuss it. I don't want to get
yeah,
you know
yeah,
too far into it, but I have to say though, and it's amazing how it's exploded in recent years. The whole it's just this resurgence of this
yeah.
love of anything mob related.
Well, here's where it gets crazier, right? So I'm not overly religious. I am a Catholic, born and raised. I do practice to try to be a good Christian. I guess it was Easter, so kind of apropos. So on one end, I try to look at people and try to say, hey, you know what? Did this person really repent? And did they change your life? So you kind of try to give people the benefit of the doubt and hope they come in good faith. But I also got burned a few times where I believe I took people for good faith and they wind up to not be repent, not to repent. So just again, maybe a little more guarded now, and maybe I'll pass up on some interesting guests that people want to hear. In the interest of really dealing with people that come in good faith, that have a story that should be heard. And I also been changing my podcast around a little bit where I am doing a lot more business people because I think people like yourself and myself. Don't get me wrong; it's really cool to hear somebody who did some cool stuff in the street, not cool stuff, but interesting stuff in the street. But I'd rather learn from the guy who has the pizzeria. I had the guy who owns Vinny's Pizza. Portnoy came there. I was interested to hear what kind of effect did Portnoy have on your restaurant. So like that was kind of cool for me. Like I said, Mark Laurie, who started Wonder. He had diapers.com. Jeff Bezos bought him out, and then he kind of got his revenge on Jeff Bezos at Walmart, and now started a restaurant that is only 10 of them. 25 are opening up, but it's valued at $3.5 million. So those are the people that you and I need to chat with. You know what I mean? Not the ex knuckle dragger and stuff. So I'm trying to maybe have a little better content in that sense. And it's going to take a little while to get there because it's called audience capture, right? You build your audience a certain way, and when you go to move over, your audience doesn't always move with you. I'll be honest, my non mob content for New Theory does not do as well as my mob content. So I created I bought another channel called Mobsters Inc. So I'm going to park my mobster stuff there. So if you want it, God bless, guys. I'm not going anywhere on that front, but I have to interview normal people.
Well, it's also the diversification aspect of it too. I mean, you have to, I do you. My opinion is, I think it's a bit of a bubble. The whole enthusiasm for mob stuff. I mean, there is a long term, consistent market for it, but I
Correct.
think the fanaticism around it right now is probably at a peak. Would you agree?
I would actually argue the peak is past because at the P word, everybody was home and they were watching stuff. There was no NFL, there was no NBA, there was maybe a bubble, but for the most part, a lot of the attention, we're in the attention economy, so all the attention went towards the mob stuff. And at first, like, wow, you had Francis on here, you had Gravano, you had ex mob guys. Like, what the heck's going on here? I think that novelty, for the most part, is ex mob stuff. I think people are over. A lot of stuff is exaggerated, so you have other people that push back on some of their narratives that you're like, wait a second, that was a really cool story, but like, the wife of that husband just called you out. Now I'm like, who do I trust? So if you take it for the historical aspect, it's fine. But I think it had its pop. I don't think you followed this, and I hope you didn't. Also, in that space, there was a lot of infighting and a lot of drama, which drama clicks and rage clicks work in the. I'm a publisher as well. I told you. Uh, Rage clicks work in the short term, but it's not a long term play. And that's the other thing that kind of crashes drama. A lot of the fighting, what kind of breaks my heart, if you will, is a lot of these guys and gals are Italian Americans, which make us look absolutely ridiculous. So that's another reason why I think it kind of had its run, and I think it's actually on the steep decline.
Well, it goes back to the autobiography I read of Giuseppe Garibaldi, who said
Yeah.
back then, when he was trying to unify Italy,
Yep.
the only way it could be accomplished is at the end of a long stick.
That's right, and that's unfortunately how it is. And in this case, it's the market, right? That's why I love do marketing. The market will always decide. I'm a free market guy to the end, and the market will decide.
Yeah, and that's true. That is the most natural, organic way, and the way it should be. Really, the free market should decide, and it is. You're right. I think we did pass the peak. Now that the way you spoke about it, thinking about it, yeah, I guess you're right. Now there is a lot of pushback, and yeah, there could be a lot of exaggeration. I'm sure there's
Yeah,
a ton of exaggeration, and for a long time, nobody really contested it because what are you going to say?
correct.
But literally anybody can say anything, and it's hyperbole, and it becomes this clickbait kind of stuff. It's really interesting and really fun to
Yeah,
watch the pushback,
yeah.
and I think it's needed because you got to have sort of an opposing view sometimes, because a
Oh,
lot of these
what's interesting?
guys.
What's interesting though is so, and I get it, but I don't agree with this. Is where I get what I don't agree. So with that pushback, a lot of the pushback went on the host of these shows. So they'll go after a host. And the thing that I have a challenge with is I'm okay with you saying, you know what, I don't like your content. This is why. I have a moral opposition for who you have on, and I kind of have a reasonable, intelligent argument, right? But the ad hominem attacks, but I just don't know what that does. Come on my show, let's talk about it. We can debate. The other thing is just debating. Debates, politicians who are looking to screw you. Have it be a man. Let's have an adult conversation, and we could walk away disagreeing, but just don't be disagreeable. You know what I mean? Hey, you know what? You have your lane, you have my lane. Hey, we're good. If it gets your views, God bless. There was even one. There was a skit. There was like an actual skit of like a Star Wars, and like my face was on. You can't make, like
Oh, so this.
I'm a no. I swear to God, like a Star Wars. I'll send it to you.
Oh wow.
Like a Star Wars scene, and I guess I was a bad guy or something. But I just don't get it. And the funny thing is, I applaud their right for their free speech. I don't like. I very rarely strike unless it's like my super core content. I don't like to strike their channels. I love it when they share their opinions. I just wish and they don't need to. The funny thing is, they don't need to do that with me. Meaning, I'll come on their show and give my case. You can come on my show. I'll hear your case. Again, we can do without the penis and the donkeys. You know, get this shit up.
Well, listen, I mean, it goes back to how I try to live my life, which is just keep it professional,
Correct.
stay professional, and listen, hosts, whether it's you, it's me, it's Piers Morgan, it's whoever,
Yeah.
you know, people, people are doing their thing. They're not taking the side. They're just putting a platform out there. But let's veer off to a different route
Yeah.
now. So
Please.
I'm very curious to know how did you get there, man? How did you build? I know obviously you started. You said 2016, but how did you get to where you're
Well,
at?
that was just part time. Not going to know part time, but like once a month, a guest here, a guest there, getting bigger guests, and then I got a little more serious in 2020, and I kind of got there by just like really not caring. And this is gonna sound terrible, but like some of the guests that I had on and have on like the PR and like famous scale, the Q score, right? What is it that your Hollywood you guys use that Q score, whatever it is. So
Yeah,
like they're much more notable than I am. But respectfully in everyday life, I'm a father. I'm a Christian. Like I'm a stand up guy to my family. Like so, I'm like, what am I doing here? Like I would probably wouldn't even hire half these people. Or afterwards, a lot of them are like, hey, can I borrow money? Like so, like honestly, when it comes to like, I'm gonna be who I am in real life, but I need to be that same person online. So I really reached out to some big names, and because they researched me and saw I was credible, were like, hey, let me go on this guy's show. Wasn't the biggest show in the world. Still not the biggest show in the space by far, get much less views than a lot of my contemporaries, but my views are real and my content's legit. So I just didn't care about who I asked to be on the show, and it worked. It worked.
yeah, and that's there's a lot to be learned just from consistency, staying in there, keep it,
Correct.
keep pumping.
Correct.
So what are you doing? What are you up to now? And where do you want to see yourself in the next 5, 10 years?
Well, so I'm working on, and usually don't mention it on my interviews, but New Jersey Digest I own, the publisher, and we do have a lot of people in the South Jersey and South Philly area. We have a ton of readers from South Philly. You may not like this, but the best cheesesteak in Philly, according to our guy Peter Candia, is not in Philly. It's in that was it Lido's? It's a tomato pie place, and he had a cheesesteak, and he made the bold statement that the best cheesesteak is outside of Philly, and it caused like a big uproar. But a lot of the Philly people backed him. So anyway, so we got New Jersey Digest, which is our kind of where I'm putting a lot of my energy now. I have the New Theory podcast and magazine, which is the kind of little ancillary income that I do. And then during my day job is I do digital marketing for businesses, PR, SEO, websites, and increase their online presence. So I would call it like maybe like a 60-30-10 in terms of income, but I have multiple streams of income, which is good, some passive, some active. And I try to mix that up. That's why I have time to do podcasts, because I do have passive income coming in, right? I told you earlier, well, how do you make money on your podcast? Well, for the most part, like for example, Jason JSV Capital is a business that we promote. But Jason, I met through the podcast. He lives around the corner from me. We became close friends. So it's like became friends, but now we do business. So just by having that one friend on the podcast, I don't make the few $100 that people are trying to make. So I got a few clients from it. Got some one-off clients, people that wanted campaigns, movie campaigns, and so forth. So what I do now is I use it to either super interesting, dope story, or somebody that I do business with that I really want to unpack their story so people can learn from. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more of a learning platform than just a crime platform.
That's great. That's great. Well, Tom, I mean, I tell you, me personally, I'm very inspired by what you're doing and how you're doing it. I hope to grow as big as you one day. And I appreciate the help that you've given me thus far. And I have to admit, I mean, you have a great system. And I think anybody who's watching this that's interested in getting becoming a podcaster, I would encourage them to reach out to you, frankly, and
Yeah.
kind of take notes.
Tom at New Theory is my email. I have an open forum. aside for I talk about making 30,000 maybe on one client, I probably donate about 10,000 of goods and services a year to smaller podcasts, people that need it. Some in the past I've given cash, some I've given in services in kind. We did a gift card program for single mothers for a minute. That did pretty well. I think we gave about 2K there. So we try to give back the way we could. I don't like super, like, hey, here's what we're doing, but low key, we've done some cool things.
Tom, you've been generous with your time.
My
But let's
pleasure.
remind everybody, first of all, please don't forget to subscribe to us, New Theory Podcast, as well as Vinny Presents. But where else could they find you, Tom?
At on X, you could say Twitter, X, at the sales expert, and just email me directly, tom@newtheory.com, with the good, bad, or ugly. Just no threats. But if it's a criticism and you don't like who I am, I'm still happy to hear from you.
And of course, we'll make sure we put links in the description, so check it out. Our guest today has been the wonderful entrepreneur, podcaster, main man from Scotch Plains, Tom LaVecchia. Tom, it's been a pleasure. Really appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
My pleasure, Vinny. Talk soon, buddy. Thanks so much.
Got it. Thank you.